My name is Benedict. My name's actually Benedict for Benedict. It feels weird not saying for higher hertz, but I haven't heard from them for a while, so I assume that maybe I'm not doing any more stuff for them. I'm not doing this out of spite, it just came along. I have really liked HoRNet's analog stage, and the cassette thing, well, I hate cassette. I used it when I was younger, when I was a kid, and also when I first started doing the music thing after I was trained in studio. So it's just kind of a case of like, I'm so used to doing these now that not having them in my life sort of feels sort of weird. And, well, to also be perfectly blunt, if higher hertz aren't using my capacity to do these, then I'm more than open to hire myself to somebody who does want me and what I can do for them and their products, getting them exposure, clarity, answering questions, what have you in the market, assuming such people exist. If interested, contact me. I'm not hard to find. Alrighty, so what we're looking at is a brand new HoRNet plugin called Cassette644. So obviously that is telling us that it bears a strong relationship to, forgive me, there's a lot of hiss in the background, that is part of this. We will talk about that as we go. The Tascam 644, which was a later multi-track, they called it the MIDI Studio. MIDI. I had a Fostex X26, which I had a hate-hate relationship with. There was a tiny bit of love in the sense that it allowed me to do what I was doing, the very early stuff, tube-way, almost human record, stuff like that, but I couldn't wait to be rid of the darn thing. It was ghastly. I hated tape. I'd use real tape in real studio, so I'm not anti-tape as a blanket, but I do have a problem with cassette. And before anyone jumps up and says, Captain Obvious, but cassette can be wonderful, I have a Yamaha deck here which has Dolby S, and that was lovely. Even with a decent quality normal cassette, that was lovely. So I'm not anti-cassette, as it can never be nice, but in practical terms of what it's going to work like and how it did work in the real world, it sucked. The fact that it let you do things was its only positive. Also a quick mention that HoRNet, one of the things I liked about them was it used to be able to just grab the DLLs and throw them in the folder where they belonged and the program would run. That seems to have changed. You now have the thing called the DoIn. Strange name, sounds an awful lot like doing, as in a spring going. It is what it is. I'm not a big fan of this sort of approach, but I guess maybe there are certain advantages. Maybe there are certain advantages for the developer, possibly at the expense of the user. I would rather be in control than have this third-party thing that says, here, let me make it easy for you and do God knows what. Not that I'm accusing HoRNet of doing anything. It's just I don't want that unnecessary layer of unnecessariness. For a while I'm pretty sure HoRNet offered us an either-or. So, yes, if some people are unable to install their own plugins, I pity them, then maybe it's a kind offer, but don't force everyone onto it, is my 2 cents on that one. So if you do go to do this, then you will have to download the DoIn, which will probably throw an error at Windows going, are you sure you want to do this? I haven't had a world explosion, so probably you do. We'll look at an initial A-B. This is a section of a track, which I've just cut down to do this. I just showed it yesterday. I'm a little on the fence as to whether this is going to make it to the album or not. It's a sort of a gothy cowboy sort of a feel, which in certain ways makes this very timely for the cassette era. This is hearing it through HoRNet cassette. This is the master I finished up with and published yesterday. Very different sound. Oh, just mention a couple of things. Firstly, this is a demo, so there are going to be dropouts. This is not an authorized review or anything like that. Although, as I've mentioned, I'm happy to be an authorized reviewer for you or whoever. Plus, this seems to take over key commands. See, pressing spacebar And if I've highlighted something, it takes over. Seems nice, but it's taken over control of my door. Some people might think that's super cool. I think that's super annoying. So HoRNet, if you are looking at this, then you do have a settings thing, perhaps. Actually, no, I don't think you do. Now, that was on the DoIn. Please give us an option, give us a little slider button as to overall whether this thing responds to key commands, because personally, finding a plugin like this taking certain key commands just infuriating. So you may see me having problems with getting the transport to play because this is stealing my spacebar. Righto. The first thing that we notice is there is a level gain. And yet we've got a link IO, link input to output levels. That probably is just tied to this, which now shows us the other little bug that I have found. So if you do this, sometimes you can end up with this sort of behavior. I'm not sure exactly what triggers it, but sometimes it happens. Clicking or re-clicking can make it go away, but it's not quite right. This may be only a thing that's happening in Reason, and I'm not going to hold it against HoRNet for this because it's a brand new device, and especially if it only happens in Reason, he probably wasn't aware. And he does have a history of fixing things. The other thing that bothers me slightly is that these curves do not match the shape of these. So we've got like a weird kind of, well, not really parallax, but kind of a strange error here in that the shape of the actual tape on the capstans, on the reels, is inconsistent with the shapes. Like the tape is actually egg-shaped. It's a slight breach of reality. But they're all small things and all fixable, or really just cosmetic and therefore kind of irrelevant. A cute thing would have been able to type something in here. As you see, I've named this one, and we'll get into why that's relevant later. But if I could type in the name of what this was or something, Benedict's Amazeful Mixtape or something, then that would be a cute thing, but not super functional other than just being able to name your instance, which we will get into as to why that may be relevant. But there is a fair level gain. You can hear it. A lovely clear master. And there's a big level boost. You can see it here as well, just in every instance. There's just a notable level gain. I'm going to delink, this is on the masters, and just drop by about 2.5 dB, which is a little tricky. Maybe if I press shift, no, it's annoying. Minus 2.5 dB seems to be, spacebar. Oh, it's not kept my... So for what's a positive review, we're running into a few little negatives. Close that and reopen it. So that's a little bit more even. Just get rid of a hiss for the moment. Now, I don't necessarily say that's a terrible thing. I'm not as obsessed with level IOs, but it does add level gain. The only reason I'm really bringing this up is that in AB, it's hard to give a fair AB when there's such a big level difference, because we will naturally go, the louder one sounds better. So here, the AB is not as dramatically weighted in the preference of the plugin as it was before. So if not careful, you can just plug it in and go, wow, that's so much better, so much fuller, because it's about 2.5 dB louder. ultimately it's not a terrible thing, but it's a thing to be aware of. I just hope that Mr. HoRNet didn't do that to fool people that they were going to be getting something that was better. But otherwise, there's plenty in here that is positive once you get over the little quirks. And so, as I say, some of the quirks may be more reason-oriented. Here is the original master that I did. As I said, here is the live thing. And everywhere that you will see a HoRNet, there was a similar device. Now, this one here was G-Sonic's analog tape machine. I thought it's only fair to replace that. I considered not replacing, but I thought, no, it's only fair, and that gives me an instance in the masters. Every other instance here was replacing a analog stage. So I really I love HoRNet's analog stage. This is the older version. I did not update to the newer version because I didn't see that it gave me what I wanted. Not that I necessarily wanted anything, but tube and group, and the sound of this is just super. It's in everything. So that's what you're hearing in version 1. In version 2, you're hearing the cassette in place of that everywhere. So we can fold him up because he's not actually active at all. But we've got all these instances across the whole mix. Everywhere that I was using the analog stage, I've now inserted a cassette. Yay. And they're actually all linked together. This is a big feature in some of the HoRNet plugins, and that's a big reason that I actually like that analog stage, is that it is able to operate a little bit more like a real sort of a situation. It's just functionally a very good thing. As you see, we've got lots of instances. This one I've labelled as master. As I said, it would be kind of nice in this situation to be able to label them here, maybe. And this one I've labelled as drums. So I'm not going through all of the others. But with linking, it is possible to have every instance follow a lot of settings. Now, not every setting will be followed. If I change EQ here, it's not cloned over there. There's that bug. It's actually happened there. Let's close him and open him again. See, it hasn't reset. And it still hasn't reset. So it's somewhere between the functionality of the button and the display of the button. But now it does appear to have reset and actually has. It's not a killer, it's just an annoyance, but no doubt once aware that should be ironed out. So again, I'm not penalising for that. It would be nice if it wasn't there, but sometimes you just can't know. But the linking here allows you to be able to turn certain functions of every instance that's linked through. And that is actually really nice. See, if I'm thinking this hiss is a little much, hiss gone. So there's quite a lot of things that you can do, like link IO can be turned on and off. I'm not going to do that in this case, simply because I want to try to keep these a little bit more even-steven, seeing the program is about comparison A to B. We've got various tape types, so we'll run through those. Normal, at low speed. Obviously a big warm sound. At high speed. Not quite as warm. I'm assuming that this was a Tascam feature where you could run the tape slower. You lost a lot of quality for that because cassette, well, never majored in quality. So if using it were in a fidelity-based situation, as in you wanted to not sound so terrible, then you would probably be using high speed over low speed. It just allowed you to make a small cassette have more content. Which if tracking a whole album or something like that was necessary. There was a logical purpose to it. So type 1, which is a normal cassette. Type 2, chrome. You hear a marked difference here. It's pretty bright. and then high speed gets really bright and incredibly hissy. And between in and out with Chrome on high speed, let's just send him back to the beginning because there are some tape loop things happening there in the composition, in the mix. There is a character imparted. With the Type 1, the character is just, well, it's like tape. It's turgid and kind of ugly, but it does add a lot to it. The Chrome adds a nicer kind of a thing. So there is something else going on here. How it's done, there is no explanation. Again, maybe there's something in the RTFM, but I haven't read it. But most manufacturers don't really tell us. Is this algorithm, or is this just IRs? I have an issue with IRs in that initially they sound great, but they don't adapt with the material. They are just like Instaham bunny ears. But the sound is good, and it's not a highly intrusive thing, so like a speaker cabinet or something like that, or a microphone. So I have no particular argument against it per se, just to say that it won't adapt with the material. So an algorithm will adapt as you get louder and softer, as cassette adapted as you got louder and softer. It was just a case of, will we make it worse here or worse there? It was worse when it did. Bloody cassettes. Whereas an IR can't do that. So if we're using this across lots of instances, like at each instrument or at each bus, then it won't behave the same if it's an IR, and I do not know which it is. I just hope it's an algorithm, because it will behave better if it's an algorithm, even though initially it may not seem as perfect. Alrighty, then we've got Type 4, which is the metal tape. Again, comparing to normal, low speed, very weird sound. Let's go to high speed. An inordinate amount of hiss. I question whether that's really a correct or reasonable amount of hiss, but not having that kind of cassette thing here, or any interest to compare A to B, I'll go, yeah, probably excessive. But you can switch it out, so it goes away. But if we compare off to on, so we've got a lot of dropouts there from demo mode. It's interesting, but we're going to go back to normal at low speed with hiss, because that's what they default to, and that's really the sound of cassette more than anything else. So that's your main set of features there, the core of what it's there to do. The linking we've talked about, how we can change various things and have them follow through. Oversampling, that's interesting. Auto, I'm not sure what auto defaults to, but it sure sounds different with none. That one would require an RTFM, assuming the RTFM actually has an answer for that. But that's a little, why would that sound different? I know that oversampling does always sound different. I'm not a firm believer that it should be there. Let's try this metal. It's just making the hiss louder. I kind of wonder at that. Again, I sort of feel like, they weren't that dramatic. But as you see with the link, that one's carried across. I'll go back to auto because it is the default. This one doesn't carry through, which is good. I'm glad it doesn't. Because we've got two modes of... stop it. We've got two modes of how we would be using that cassette. So when we record to cassette, we can have our EQ on, and then the results of that are being recorded onto tape. And then we've got the playback in which case the playback goes through the EQ. So it's nicely thought out from Mr. HoRNet that he's given us the ability to choose whether we're using this instance as recording or as playback. So that's a good thing, and it's also really good that they're not tied into this link, so that I can say, well, okay, I'm going to use each of my instances against an instrument here, because you see that they're at the end of an instrument chain, so it's like all the things that are happening to the drum machine before it gets to the desk, and therefore we will do that as in, well, it's been recorded with this EQ, whatever I've set. And then this one on the masters, it would be playing back and we would EQ it. So that's good thinking, it really is. The display here is 99% useless. It's most likely displaying some sort of VU, but I can't work out what it is because it doesn't match. Look at the lovely levels of hiss in here. Let's go back to low speed. Put ourselves on. This is at minus 12. So it's, again, it's not a major complaint, it's just you can't use those things. They're just a novelty more than anything else. That's really all of those things, and then we've got this equalizer. So we will use this on the masters. It gets brighter, but is there something that we're noticing? It gets quieter. So there is some sort, sorry, it just annoys me with this having taken my spacebar. There is some sort of magical maths in here which may or may not have been endemic to this 4-track that appears to be the donor, but it's a little odd, unless it was a feature of it, that as we turn up the highs, we actually lose presence of the whole mix. I'm not a fan of that, and again, I would rather that there be a switch to say we can have this behave in what we might call a native mode, which is that as you turn something up, the mix will naturally get louder, because that's, I see EQ as an additive process. The fact that it gets brighter, but the mix gets quieter overall, I see the logic to it, but I find it harder to make decisions with that. But nonetheless, let's see if we can make this mix sound a little nicer. The main thing that I want to do is get rid of that big tubby tummy that we've got. So let's pull out our mid-gain and try and find it. It's obviously not there. I reckon this is a pretty broad thing. That's probably helped a bit, but there's just so much broad low mids. Let's get rid of that hiss. And there are definitely some nice things that this is doing. Are they the right things? That's going to be up to you. I'm not convinced whether this mix that I've got quite sits right. It's always been a funny one for me, which is part of why I'm not sure whether it's really going to become an album piece, but it makes it an interesting one for this. And again, because it's got this sort of mid to late period gothy sort of cowboy feel to it, which puts it perfectly in line with cassette being the format that would have been its curse, its nemesis. And it's a mix that sounds funny, which is quite consistent with doing them on 4-tracks. They always sounded off. But this is adding a nice feel. This mix that I've got tends to go from being too bassy to too brittle. Original. There's a lot of nice brightness and openness in highs. This becomes a little tubby in the tummy, but it kind of suits the material. We get a little bit of a radio sound to it. We're losing a lot of intricate detail on those guitars, which are not guitars, of course. But a really nice warmth overall. My bottom line on it is, my conclusions are that it does what it says it's going to do, and within the context of cassette, which sounds awful always, as a general rule, it's really pretty good. It's cleverly designed. Yes, the hiss may be excessive. It might have been better to either have a multi-stage switch or a knob, so that I can say, look, I'm happy to have hiss. I am happy to have hiss, but not that much. It's a bit of a change, but bearing in mind, most people would probably be getting this more for a character thing than a mastering thing. But because it has this link and is making us think of these multi-track studios, ghastly plastic boxes, then it's only a matter of time before people do the kind of thing that I'm doing and saying, well, I can tie it together and make my whole DAW sound and feel like it's like a multi-track, a Porter Studio type thing. And yes, no, it does and doesn't do that. I don't think it's the same. It was always a horrid experience, but it does provide something which is interesting. I have looked at other sort of cassette type things, and they're always going to leave me on the, because would I make a record with this? Unless it was a novelty record, doing what I'm doing here is probably not what I would do. That said, if I were to apply it, let's just turn it off in a few instances. If I was to apply it everywhere else but here, so I'll open this instance. That's off altogether. So this is on the tracks, but not on the master. Then we end up with a different sort of outcome. And then it becomes a nicer, more usable thing. There is something nice about what it's doing with regards to, I'm not so sure about the bass, but the drums have this nice little round, juicy punch to them, punchable. The guitars do lose some of that, what we might call fizziness. So there are positives about this. At, I think it's about €17. It's not the cheapest of his things, but it's also brand new, so fair enough. It's a character device, and it has some characterful features, some of which are probably bugs and hopefully will go away quite soon. And I'm still annoyed by these tape things. Make them concentric. But it's a pretty cool device, and if it's the sort of thing that you're looking for, it does potentially serve a place. My advice, just don't overuse it. or you could end up with a bit of a turgid mess whilst you think that you are making things sound better. So probably use a third party to help you understand whether you're really getting something better, or at least overnight it before you do something like I've done here, and apply it so liberally that, well, that it compounds itself rather aggressively. But cool device. It screams HoRNet overall, and that's a good thing because that's his style. And really, from A to B, this is again with this running on absolutely everything, including our master EQ. This is the master actually using the HoRNet analog stage everywhere here, and the G-Sonic tape. This is put through the HoRNet cassette at every stage. And there are nice things about it. It definitely becomes warmer. As to whether that warmer is just like, what did you do, is going to be between you and your God. And again, I think that if you are going down this path and use it carefully in the right stages, probably not so much on the masters, then I think there are good things about it. To move to one of the better tape formulations. Okay, it's still adding hiss. So why would the EQ hiss? Okay, no, it's just adding hiss at that point. So there's a complex relationship between the hisses in here. So now every instance is metal tape. It doesn't sound very nice. Let's pull that EQ out. Now that does potentially sound quite nice. There's a nice brightness, a nice presence in here. So I will revise. It is possible that you can use this as a character master as well at metal and high speed. Lower speed was a little odder, to be expected. So there's nothing to stop you from trying the alternate approaches. It sounds a little bit wiry to me. It's like Chrome seems to want to overcompensate. And I never liked Chrome when I was a kid either. It's like it said, here are all the problems with normal cassette, let's just completely turn everything upside down and make all the things that were a problem into a failing. I've never thought Chrome was a great thing. But your metal option, it's changing our low mids as well, but it is giving a nice presence. So again, overall, it's stop. It's well done. It's got a good set of features and a nicely thought out and balanced set of features. Very much also around this ability to link them together. In this instance, I might have one set of settings for all of these and then a different set of settings for the master. But if we are emulating that 1 4-track box, then having them all tied together is very, very consistent. So it's a cool device. It's got a couple little bugs to iron out, but no doubt that will happen. If it does interest you, hop on over to HoRNet, download the DoIn, and try it out. It's not intrusive in the trial thing. You're hearing the dropouts there. I think it's pretty cool. If you are liking the way that I approach reviews, the honesty, well, just what I do, then feel free to also contact me as well. I am for hire in this, as well as the mixing and record production work that I major in. You have a great day.